Hello and welcome to Conversations with Curtis. I'm Paul Stetler, and today I am very excited to bring to you a conversation that I had with Allan Plenderleith. Allan is the director and writer and game developer of The Bunker, an FMV, choose your own adventure or interactive movie, or however you want to call these games these days. But he created that game. Daniel and I played it a few weeks ago, and we loved it. And I could tell that this person was a kindred spirit, and had to talk to him. And I'm so glad that I did. Allan is just a very talented guy, has some great stories about how he got to where he got to. And I'm excited to share that conversation with you right now. We want to let you know that there are some spoilers. We talk about some of the things that happen in the game, The Bunker. And so if you are planning on playing it, we will make sure that we let you know where those spoilers are so that it doesn't ruin your experience playing the game. All right. Enjoy my conversation with Allan Plenderleith. Allan Plenderleith, welcome to Conversations with Curtis. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to see you.
Before we dive I have a lot of questions for you. I'm fascinated by the work that you are putting out there. And but before we get started, I think the most important thing for me is to know. So the question that I have is going to kind of predicate how the interview is going to go. And my question for you.
I know this question. Yeah.
Have you ever played Phantasmagoria 2: A Puzzle of Flesh?
Recently, yes, but not at the time.
Really?
Not at the time, and I had not heard of it before The Bunker.
Wow.
Okay. Bizarrely, because literally, I'd heard of the name, and I just think I had a Mac at the time in the 90s, and it was terrible. You could only get a few games, and because I was doing kind of like graphic design stuff. And so I was, let's get a Mac. But it was actually terrible for games.
Yeah, so, no, you couldn't get anything on there.
Yeah, 1996, I had a Mac. And I missed out on a whole load of really great FMVs.
Well, again, that sort of ruins my credibility. So, I mean, that's the only thing I've got going for this. So to not, so we'll have to sort of start. I'm going to work my way out of the hole. But so you said you've actually seen or some of it since then, or?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funnily enough, I did play it and then I caught wind of your channel. And just seeing the amount of the fan base for this really, really incredible original game. And for the time, I mean, for 1996, what they did was, I think, was incredible. I mean, really, really, groundbreaking. And the size of the game as well, the length of it and the size of it and the amount of data that had to go into that was, really, I don't know how they did it. I actually have no clue how they did it, because
my background here is my background is near the end of the game when Curtis goes down into the sort of the secret area, and this is the closest to a bunker I could come up with. So I thought that this was my way of
It's pretty close. Yeah, you got the pipes on the ceiling, the kind of claustrophobic atmosphere.
Exactly. Yeah, there's. I agree. I think that, and I want to get off of my game. This is sort of just a joke about, because the joke is that just about, I think everybody I've interviewed so far has never played the game. So I'm waiting for that one person. Well, it sounds like you got a chance to play some of it. But you're right. The first game was the groundbreaking one. No one had ever, and that one got all kinds of, that broke records in terms of, sales and all that. But it was all blue screen. It really was, and then the game that I was in, they decided that they wanted to film it like a movie. So we had sets and we were on locations. And so there was a much more filmic, cinematic kind of feel to it. And it does, to me, looking back on it now, again, I was like an actor, so I was just there for the gig. It felt like a movie to me, a strange movie, because there were so many little teeny scenes that you had to do over and over again. But looking back at it now, it really does feel like it was ahead of its time in terms of the look and the cinema quality of it.
Yeah.
And then when we played The Bunker, there were just these wonderful connections between what we saw, so it was really just once I saw what you did, and you did such a great job with this game. To me, that's where interactive movies or interactive games, or however you want to call them these days, FMVs, you're taking it to the level I've always hoped it would get to.
Well, yeah, I mean, it took a long time to get that quality of video footage working in a game engine. I mean, the developers were incredible. I mean, we just shot it really on HD, hoping they could get it onto consoles and PCs.
Yeah.
Looking the same. We knew if we filmed it well and we had it, looking good, then great. But I mean, for the hunting, the first one.
Yeah, tell me about the hunting. So let's go back a little bit. So I want to know how I read a little bit of your history, and I know that what were you doing prior to your foray into the world of video games?
I guess script writing, really. I mean, I was doing a bunch of things. I'm a cartoonist originally. That's where it started. I then got into animation through cartooning. I was a huge fan of The Far Side and Garfield, and I just always wanted to be a cartoonist, but didn't know how that would be a thing, Got in through that way through greetings cards, actually. And then that led to me.
Started with greeting cards was one of your
greeting cards. Yeah, so that's when I was about like 22.
Wow.
And then and I managed to get arranged in the shops, and I wanted to make that into animation because I really wanted to be a sort of writer. So being a cartoonist, I did a storyboard based on the Odd Squad, which was called, and managed to get it to a few different places, and a place called Granada at the time in the UK. They had a company called ITEL. ITEL picked it up with Cosgrove Hall, who were my sort of gods, because they animated Danger Mouse, which is still one of my favorite shows from back then.
Yeah.
And I got a deal through that. So that led to me getting a writer's agent and becoming a scriptwriter for animation.
Yeah, how old were you at that point?
I was about 25.
Wow,
26.
so you really sort of leapt right through quite a trajectory.
I mean, I went to university to do like marketing and production engineering. It was the most boring degree ever, and I never used it. But everyone else told me, you got to get a degree and then you can worry about all the creative stuff, But I always wanted to be creative and do some kind of creative job. But at the time, in the 80s in Scotland, I didn't see any, avenues for that to happen. Not where I lived, anyway.
Where are you from? What town in Scotland?
It's called East Kilbride, and it's near kind of Glasgow, Glasgow. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I went to uni, did that, and then ended up, being a cartoonist after 4 years at university. So, but that led to the script writing, which led to, just looking at sort of, writing for different forms, different media. And then it really wasn't until about, I'll say 12 years ago that the idea of, iPads and all that, were very popular.
Oh, still are. My kids are on them all the time.
Yeah. And it was really my daughter, she was playing with an iPad. She was watching CBeebies and BBC children's programs. And I saw her looking at a door on the screen. And because she'd been playing with apps previously to watching, linear content, she swiped the screen to open the door, and the door didn't open. And I
why isn't this happening?
Yeah, why is nothing happening? The game's broke. And so that's when a little kind of light bulb went off, and I thought, wouldn't that be great if you, on a live action, piece of footage, you swiped or did something, and something happened. And that's when I started. Well, I just got I didn't even have an iPhone at the time. It was an iPod Touch, and I went out and I just filmed a bunch of footage, like walking down a path and then turning left, turning right. I think that's what I did. And I brought that into Flash animation at the time. Remember Adobe Flash?
Yeah.
And then converted the footage into sort of, a series of stills, I think, which is how a lot of some of these games, used to work. It was a series of stills as opposed to actual movie footage. And I realized that you could actually do it. So you could have some movie footage, you could have two buttons jump up, and you could choose left or right, and it would work. And I thought, right, boom, I've got to do it. I've got to make a game.
So had you ever done any apps prior to this?
Yeah, we've done some children's book apps. So I've got some children's books that we animated into little interactive adventures. The Smelly Sprout was one of my books, and we did a little kids app for that. And those are really good fun. Tickle finger. You can't get them now, of course. They're not kind of been updated. But that really taught us quite a lot about just that interactivity.
So you had dipped your toes in enough with your work.
Yeah.
And so you'd gotten a sense of it. And then, and at some point, I definitely want to talk to you about your work, your children's work, because I work with educational assembly programs too. So I work with kids quite a bit. But so you've had a little bit of time. You knew how the apps worked, and you were thinking, hey, I can maybe make this happen. And
and then it really was a case of having the idea, but always with the question of, can we do that? So for instance,
and are you at what point when you say we, are you just you at this point, or do you have a team or a group of people that?
No, I had a friend of mine, Jason, was the sort of developer on the apps that we were doing.
Okay,
and Jason, very clever, worked out how to do certain things, compress the video so it was small enough to be able to load up so that you had two videos waiting, because on an iPhone, an iPhone's very different. It certainly was back then to a console or, PlayStation or, PCs and so on, that were much more memory. So on a phone, we had to try and make that concept work. So we could never have more than two branches, I don't think. And at any point, that the player, depending on what they did, could switch to that different movie track. And that took a lot of working out. And so it had to be super compressed. It just had to be like almost, it was kind of, it was pretty good. You could get away with it because it was a horror. It was a zombie horror. Yeah. It was fun footage.
The more grainy or whatever it looks, it actually helps the style. Yeah.
But I was so clueless about movie, footage and files and grading and everything else. I was completely new. I had never done any training in film.
Isn't that the thing, though? It's like it would have been overwhelming if you knew what you were getting yourself into. It may have been too much. So it's really good going in a little blind and just sort of stumbling upon the problems that you have to solve along the way.
Exactly. And we had no budget whatsoever. We took a punt on the whole thing. And so everybody that worked on the hunting worked for free. Yeah. Because I said to them, I have no idea if the App Store are even going to take this. A zombie live action horror where zombies are killing you, blood splattering over the screen and all sorts. I had no idea. So I always knew that from day one. So I said, but the funny thing is, if you say to anyone, do you want to be in a zombie movie? They go, yes, when,
You had a bit of a calling card with that one, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, but the thing is that I've read a little bit about this, Allan, and you didn't just go, oh, it would be fun to make, I'll just have a first person walking down some hallways and they'll run into a zombie or two. This was big. You ended up having 50, 60 extras.
The big scene was about 50 odd people.
Did you know at the time that you wanted to go that big, or did it just continue to grow as you were moving forward?
I think it was very sporadic. It wasn't like, we've got the script, let's film it over 2 weeks like you're supposed to do. It was more like, oh, we've got this scene written, let's go and film it now. Who's free, so-and-so's free, okay, let's get them. So it was kind of grabbing over about 6 months the shoots, because it was being programmed in bits and pieces as well. It was being programmed in amongst other apps.
And early on, you must have had to deal with makeup and designers and such to
well, that was the great thing about YouTube, because YouTube was kind of new, really, and suddenly you realize every single thing you want to learn is on YouTube. So, literally, I'd put in how do you do a scar across the face, and using with no budget, no latex, nothing. And it was super easy, just some glue and some bits of paper and some paint and fake blood. And I did end up buying actually some prosthetics, some really close-up prosthetics. That, it was a nice ripped jaw scene, and I really wanted to get in close and see it. It was a lot of it was just making stuff up. I did a lot of the makeup effects and just getting people in, whoever could say yes, really, at the time. But it was the shoot with 50 people was such good fun. It was all done in one day. And I wanted a scene where, because it was all shot POV, so it was first person POV. So I was the cameraman. So the hands that you see in the hunting, which you can't get, so you'll never see it.
I want to know about, is there ever a chance that this can be people are, I imagine people would love to have access to it.
It was really, it got a great reaction at the time, and it did really well in terms of the ratings. So it got 5-star ratings on the App Store, and people were terrified, and it got Cult of Mac said, this will scare the shit out of you, which was the best quote ever. That was
for sure.
And it was really terrifying because it was POV and you couldn't look away. So it was kind of like a sort of Blair Witch project mixed with zombies, but interactive, because in a horror game, the thing about the difference between, all these FMVs and a regular movie is you can look away in a movie, you can go to the toilet, you can go on your phone, but on a game, if you do that, you die, so that was what I wanted the whole time, is that, punish the player for not reacting. So, if they
so you have to create timers too, right? They only have so much time. They probably have a few indicators of whether they're going in the right direction or not. And
exactly. That always raises the tension. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of quick time stuff nowadays, but back then that's kind of what we decided to do. It was a good way to, punch the zombie. You had to batter the screen a certain amount of times to punch the zombie. But if you didn't do it fast enough, you would die. And so that, people's sort of heart rate immediately went up. And because it was on a phone, I mean, no one called it an FMV because it was on a phone.
Right.
The audience of phones were seemingly a completely different audience. But as soon as we released the bunker on PC, it was an FMV. Even though to me it was the same thing.
Right.
One had a budget, one didn't.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. Now you have to tell the story. What I read was you shot everything on an iPhone, and yet you were making everything up on the fly. So is it true that you sort of put the iPhone up on your head, but you weren't able to necessarily see what the iPhone was seeing? Is this right? So how did
it was really not a good way to do it. There was no GoPros then when we did it. It sounds like we filmed it in the 18th century, but it was only like 10 years ago, whatever. But there was no GoPros then, certainly not that I could find. So what I did was I had one of those Gorilla Pod tripods, the ones with the sort of the grippy, the bendy legs, and attached that with gaffer tape to a bicycle helmet. And the phone was here. The phone was this close to my face.
Oh, gosh.
Glowing, like, because it had to be that way around. And I had to be able to click the record button. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous now. I can't even believe it. And then I had to run at zombies and away from zombies and do just looking at the ground with this glowing screen. It was really stupid.
But it's just so creative, Al. I mean, that's just the fact that I just love the ingenuity of that, of just sort of taking what you have and making the most of it. that there must have been a real joy in the freedom of, not being beholden to certain, ways of doing things, which I'm sure as you've gotten more, I'm sure as the bunker progressed, you're getting into more, professional levels of doing things. But I'm sure there was that must have been just a heck of an experience.
It was funny just making up, shots, because there was a shot where I had to, because you don't realize until you have to film stuff that doing POV is really a ridiculous idea. And so I wanted to have a continuous shot where I would run through a field, 50 zombies would try and attack me. This is jumping off of a climbing frame, all in one take, and running all the way to the farmhouse where supposedly your girlfriend is in, and climb through a window. And then sort of land inside the house, looking up at the window, which was actually my favorite shot in the whole thing. And all the zombies are at the window, kind of the hands coming in, and the beautiful light shining through, because it was a real abandoned house. It was really quite dodgy. You wouldn't get any planning permission.
How did you find your locations?
It was a house next to the boot camp place that I used to go to. And it was just there. It was just sitting there. And it belonged to this farmer who didn't know what to do with it. And so we did ask permission. We said, can we use it? And he said, yes, but if anything happens, it's nothing to do with me. And we were like, fine, okay, we've got, carte blanche. But it was really dangerous to film inside. I was kind of scared for the actors. We had one actor who was the girlfriend, and she was hiding. And you had the option as well, you see, to not go into the scary farmhouse. That was one of the main things, the point of the hunting, was to have, in a horror film, they always go into the scary house, even though they shouldn't. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if you don't go in and you get a really cool death because of that? You get a really amazing death. So there was a second abandoned farmhouse right next to the big abandoned farmhouse. I mean, you couldn't wish for more. It was incredible. And so we filmed another scene in there where you got ripped to shreds in a loft door, and it was great.
This is so amazing. I've never would have heard this story. I mean, I'm so grateful for this world that I've stumbled into all these years later. But just to hear what you did, and this was just a side project. You're a dad, you're doing it. And my guess, I guess I have a question for you. So, working in children's entertainment for, I imagine what you would call your career, your day job, I guess. It doesn't surprise me that you need to use a completely different side of your brain, and to go into horror I think where some people might think, wow, that's kind of strange to go from children to horror. But I think that for me, having worked with kids quite a bit, I very much need a creative side of my life that is the complete opposite of working with children, which I love. But for me, it's more of a literary sort of pursuit. But yeah, so it makes sense to me that there's that the yang to your yin is horror, and I'm curious where that came from.
Well, I'm a huge animation fan. I'm a huge horror fan. Huge sci-fi fan. And to me, it's just about if you've got an opportunity to try and tell a story, and you've got an idea that's so powerful that you can't sleep until it's out of your system, then you do it. And sometimes that's a children's book. Sometimes it's an animated series. Sometimes it's a video game. And I've always loved scary video games. I just think, they're few and far between movies which scare me. But there are so many video games that scare me that, I can't even play some of them because they're too scared. They're just terrifying. They're just literally feel like you're going to die, literally. Because you never really feel that way in a movie, even though it could be the best horror movie ever and you can get jump scares. Something about the interactivity of a video game that just makes you think you're there because you're doing stuff. You're not passive. You're active.
For the first, years ago, I was in a play, a few years ago, and my castmates were younger, and they were all gamers, and they had me come over one night, and they had the VR headset, and I'd never done VR. It was fascinating. I loved it, and they put me in this game, which was like a horror carnival ride. You're in a little
Nice.
little booth where you're just kind of going through a big kind of very scary clown tent, and then little by little these zombie clowns would come out, and then you'd have to shoot them or whatever, and it was horrifying. It was
Terrifying.
absolutely horrifying. Yeah, my heartbeat was going. It was so, yeah.
Yeah. No, there were so many really great horror games, and there is something just about that. You feel like you're there. You're so much more immersive than a movie will ever be.
Well, you said something that, I mean, I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think a lot of people that will be watching this would find this interesting. You talk about having an idea that haunts you to the point that you have to do it. You have to, you can't. And I think there's a lot of people out there, myself included, who have a lot of great ideas. It would be really great ideas they're fun, but it's taking that step to get the ball rolling. And whenever I've done a project that ultimately went to fruition, I've always found it fascinating where it's like, okay, I'm taking these preliminary steps. It still may not happen. And then somewhere along the line, you go, oh, I'm in it now. And this has to move forward. You seem like someone who has no problem taking that step to do the thing that you want to do. Is that just an inherent quality in you, or what is it about going from an idea to making it happen? What is that?
Well, I mean, lots of ideas that I come up with don't get made,
of course, sure.
I mean, that's just being a writer, and you got to, I mean, I think my mum always instilled in me a sense that, well, what do they know type of attitude, whenever I got rejected from children's book publishers when I was younger, I was like 15, I would send stuff away. She would always be like, well, what do they know? It's their loss type of thing. And that's always stuck with me. And I do always think, yeah, what do they know? Even now, when I send stuff away and people reject it, or they give some kind of lame excuse why they can't do it or why they don't want to do it, I just think, well, it's not for them. It's their loss. Let's move on. Let's try and make it happen. Sometimes ideas you just have to let go and just say, well, that's never going to happen. Or sometimes things like the hunting in the bunker is you just start making it yourself. You don't wait on anybody else. You don't sort of stop to wait for money coming in or something else. You take a bit of a risk, you take a bit of a gamble, and you make it happen. And I think sometimes you just have to do that. If you believe that strongly about it, then just believe in it and make it happen somehow.
But then at some point, and with the hunting, it sounds to me like that just truly was guerrilla. Just get out there, do it, just keep it going. But the bunker is definitely a next step in terms of quality and I'm sure the amount. So let's talk a little bit about the bunker. So where did that idea come from? Well,
the bunker really came from the fact that I'd done the hunting, with no budget. So I had done well in the App Store, and we just said to investors, what would happen if we had some budget and we could do it properly, and we could really explore this genre and explore the technology, what it's capable of, get some really sort of good actors in, get a proper crew, proper lighting people, proper makeup department, everything, and that was the pitch really. What we ended up doing was we filmed this short trailer for the bunker, which was a fake trailer. So it was a sort of that's always a good thing, I think, as well. Was if you can show someone your vision without having to spend too much money.
Yeah.
So we did a fake trailer. We got Adam Brown, We did a
You had already
fake.
got him at that point. He had already kind of.
Yeah, he said yes. He was on, and I just loved him.
Oh, he was great. He's great. I want to talk to him too, because his character is. It feels like there seems to be there's a very strange sort of similarity between his character and the Curtis Craig character in Phantasmagoria too. Sort of
kind of clueless and what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, sort of innocent man, quite Hitchcockian, type of story, where an innocent person is in a terrible situation and they have no idea what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So you feel sorry for them. You feel I know vulnerable as well. That's what I had. So we got Adam, and that vulnerability, shot a fake trailer. It was about a minute long. And when we showed that to people, just all these publishers just said, yes, we want to do it.
Fantastic. So then did you were able to, and when you say publishers, does that also include the funding? Funding started to come in?
Well, the publishers agreed to publish it. The funding came from a private investor.
Okay.
So that's how we got it made. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. So you put so then the idea itself, what made you go, okay, bunker?
Location was everything. Absolutely everything. I didn't sit down and go, I've got this idea of setting a nuclear bunker. Okay. Great. What can we find one? It was more like, okay, we're going to do an interactive movie, which is what I was calling it at the time. We need a good location. And I didn't want to do like a haunted house, really like an old mansion. I wanted to do something more interesting, a bit weird. And then we discovered this literal nuclear bunker that the government left in the 80s, I think, or the early 90s. And they just left one day. They just said, okay, we don't need this anymore. There's no Cold War. The farmer who owned the land originally, who got booted out to live in a house somewhere, they said, do you want the land back and you can have the bunker? If you do whatever you like, you make it into a museum, whatever you want to do. And that's exactly what he did. He made it into a little museum, which you can go and visit in Brentwood in Essex. And there's a sign that says "Secret Nuclear Bunker" this way. Big brown thing. And all it is, when you go there, it looks like nothing. You expect I expected some kind of like a nuclear power plant or something. Then underneath all this stuff, there's a house. Literally, there's a house on the top, a little farmhouse, and that is a very small farmhouse, tiny little thing. And then literally, you just go down these steps, and you're in an underground nuclear bunker, which is 3 levels. And of course, as soon as I saw that, my brain was just like, what are we going to do?
It really was the beginning was location. I want to find an interesting location, and then once I find that location, that is going to, and it ultimately did sort of inspire the story. So
because in FMV, that's your levels. That's your most of your game has already been made. Then your assets in terms of the backgrounds have been created. So you need, we didn't have money for green screens and special effects and, spaceship backgrounds and whatever. So we needed a cool background, and that, there was nothing cooler than that. And it had because I had all of the 90s and 80s, had a mixture of sort of 60s, 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Hardware, tech. It had all the Commodore computers. It even had sort of fax machines, but old telefax machines and big giant government things with the sheets of printouts still there. I mean, it's the most fascinating place. Because that was already there. That's when my mind started thinking, okay, well, they went there in the 80s, and so what would happen if somebody ended up there? A child was born there, and 30 years later is the only person left, and they're surviving in this bunker, and they have no idea what's happened up above. It could have been a nuclear war, there could have been nothing, but something terrible happened in the bunker, and for some reason that child grew up alone in the bunker, and that was the concept.
It's so great, and I would say that whoever whoever chose to stock the bunker with sardines should have had could have had a could have thought about something else. That was a very funny moment.
Yeah, beans and sardines, not a great combination. A good job he was alone.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's the game. You're right. It just the atmosphere just immediately sucked me in. It's just got everything, and uh, those games in the past, like including the ones that I'm in, there's a cheesy factor to it. Even when we were making Phantasmagoria 2, there were moments as in when I was working with some of the other actors, where we would be like, okay,
Really?
okay, a little bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've come to appreciate. Um, I was just a snob, I was I did theater. I was all about,
Yeah.
I love doing the classics. So that it was, it didn't rise to that level for me at the time as a young, hungry actor who wanted to, to do these things. But I look back on it now and I see, um, there were a lot of things going on that the game that I was in was exploring that no games ever explored before. They explored sexuality. They explored
Yeah.
mental health. They explored, they had the first gay character in a video game that wasn't being made fun of. It was the most, the most, down to earth person in the whole game. So there was a lot of really wonderful
Yeah.
qualities to that. But when I watched your game, I just thought, oh boy, the acting was just spot on all the way through. There was a real, it took everything some of these games and back in the day did, and you took it to the next level. I would imagine the one thing I noticed, and I imagine this is just based on budget and everything else, was it's a shorter game, and there's not as much opportunity to interact. There's not as many things to interact with, and I wonder if you said you never watched or played any of those games in the past, but I know that some of those old FMV games are pretty convoluted and difficult, but there was a quality about being able to just really explore a whole bunch of different things. And I'm
Yeah.
curious if was that something you had hoped to have more of, or or was this exactly what you knew you could get with this game?
No, there was a ton of things we had to let go by the wayside. We shot all the big wide shots in 4K because I wanted to be able to zoom in as a player and be able to look around a room as if you're Adam looking around a room,
Yeah.
and you see a door or you see a computer and then you click on that. That was not possible in Unity at the time. We built it in Unity 2D, not Unity 3D. But Unity did not want to deal with 4K footage zoomed in and then being moved around. It could barely do it with a still, never mind 4K footage, actual footage with particles and,
Right.
moving looped footage. So that's just one example. There was a bunch of other stuff that we just couldn't do just because the technology wasn't there. We had all these sort of hopes and dreams. So it's not as interactive as I would have liked, because the technology couldn't handle it. One of the great things about your game is that it's a game first. It's actually a game, and then it's a sort of movie as well. Whereas the Bunk was more of a movie first, with a little bit of interactivity. It's more of an explorative movie. It's a non-linear movie as opposed to a video game. But I never really thought of it as a video game anyway. It was always a non-linear movie to me,
Yeah.
So I get people that say, I know it's not that interactive, you can't do very much. But it was what we could do with the technology at the time.
It's fantastic, and it's and it seems to me. I mean, I want to hear what you're thinking of next, but it seems to me that you're exploring things right at the edge of where technology is right now, and I imagine that even between Bunker was what? How many years? 5, 6 years ago? When was it? What year?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I've
Okay.
forgotten
So,
exactly when.
so I
Yeah.
imagine as you're exploring, you're seeing, I'm sure certain things have opened up now that you didn't have access to before. And I'm sure that's a nice candy store that you get to go play in at some point. Are you,
Yeah, but it's also about audience expectations because when we did the bunker, there really wasn't any other FMVs around. There was Her Story, which came out
yeah,
sort of the year before the bunker was released, and that was great, and then there was a sort of a slew of everybody sort of realizing, oh, we can do this now. This is back, what can we do? And so some of them are very binary, left or right, do this or that. But I've got no interest in that because I did that in the bunker. In the hunting. The hunting was more of a, path, left, right, run away from zombies, fight the zombies,
right.
always binary choices. Whereas moving forward, I don't really want to do that. I want to see how far we can go with making video game footage interactive, film footage as interactive as possible. And yeah, it's really interesting. You kind of start with the idea and then you start making the game and then you realize what you can do and what you can't do. So which is probably the wrong way around to do it, but it's kind of the way my brain works. It's more like, can we do this? Let's try it.
Have you seen any of the Markiplier YouTube
Yeah.
interactive
I love
films?
Markiplier. Yeah.
The one that kind of blew my mind. I had never, that was my first time seeing a more modern, choose your own adventure, choose the path,
Right.
I guess. But
Yeah.
I thought that was just so fascinating that he was able to use the YouTube algorithms of, once you get to the end of a scene, that you get these two options to go from.
Yeah.
And
that's right. I mean, it's not the first time that's been done. A few adverts tried it in the past and so on. And yeah, I mean, I think that's all great. There's definitely an audience for that kind of stuff. But there's also this sort of new FMV audience that's there that does love the fact that it's real people you're watching. It's real actors, and as opposed to, CGI games are incredible. They're wonderful, but it's just a different little niche now. It's a little niche of storytelling that's different. And what we've learned is more about what audience are expecting, what their expectations are. They know that they can only do certain things in an FMV now. But they do want lots of choice. They want lots of endings. They want to explore a game in their own way, which is kind of what Sam Barlow does with his games. The story's there, but you're exploring it in your own way. And the bunker is sort of like that as well, in a way.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can rush through the bunker if you want, or you can spend time. You can read all the reports. And there's lots of sort of B stories which are in there.
Yeah.
Of little characters that pop up that you never see. There's a lot of sad stories, that are there in the background. Which
it's funny. When I play, I think my natural tendency, as somebody who came to playing games very late. I've only started playing games a couple of years ago, and right now we're sort of mired in those classic adventure games, and I tend to want to see some of the newer stuff that appeals to me quite a bit. But my goal, I love to just take my time. I love looking at all the little things. I sometimes worry that if we're streaming it, I feel like I need to maybe keep moving ahead. But I think if I were playing more just on my own, I would have spent so much more time with your game and looking at every single little moment. I love that stuff. There's something about I don't know what it is, but it seems like there's that the FMV or the interactive movie genre right now is almost completely owned by developers in the UK. There's something there's so many. There's Sam Barlow, there's Diavecchi Studios, there's the folks that did Contradiction, Spot the Liar. There's I'm not sure if you saw Not for Broadcast. That's super fun.
That's really good.
So
yeah.
just it's all this it's all
I know.
coming
I
out of
never
the
even
UK.
thought about that. You're right. I don't know
Feels
why
like you
that
guys
is.
are part of a fraternity or something. Do you all hang out and have drinks and get?
No, but I do know Paul Rashid, and I've spoken to Sam Barlow a few times. But no, no, it's weird. You're right. It's a lot of British writers. I think maybe that's just a love of television and movies. You know, doing things on the cheap.
Yeah,
because we're used to doing low budget things and making things work. I mean, Not for Broadcast is a great example of something low budget, but it's a very long game. It's a very big game.
it is.
Um,
Yeah,
and they just kept adding and adding and adding to it, which is a really interesting way to do it. So you're building up an audience gradually, rather than just saying, boom, here's the whole thing.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's lots of ways to do it, and they're all very different. All these games are all very different. They're all with their own voice, and I guess they've all come from this idea of, can we do that? Can we do something interesting with live action and proper actors and just actors who are, because it's always fun working with actors. And I was going to say, it must have been really incredible for you, because back then there was no reference point really of any other. They couldn't say, oh well, you've obviously played this game, so therefore it's like that. Because it was groundbreaking.
Well, it was, and it was. I mean, when I came into the project kind of late in the game. I think they had another actor and that who dropped out, so they were kind of scrambling, and then found me, and so it was about I got hired about maybe 2 months or a month and a half before we went into to filming, and I remember I went by to pick up, or I think they sent me the script, and it was 400 pages. It was one of the biggest.
Wow.
It was stunning to look at, because they had everything on there. So for me, the dialogue was just an element, because they had all of the gameplay, and they had all of so they, Lorelei Shannon, who wrote it. I mean, I don't know how they were able to
How did they
write that in advance and have
they
that
couldn't have had a flowchart on a computer, because you didn't have that capability, at the time. And if you wanted to write a script, you had to write it on a typewriter.
Yeah, exactly.
And
and I read where in one of your previous interviews you had talked about your actors, and this didn't surprise me at all, that they weren't gamers, so they didn't really come in thinking. They were coming in to do a film. That's what they do, and that's how they approached it.
Well, they were actually very good. That they probably got used to it quicker than the crew. The crew were sort of a bit more, took them a bit more explaining, because actors are used to doing the same. For a start, they're used to doing a film in the wrong order.
Yeah.
So everything's all over the place, because you have to just to save costs. But they weren't so much used to doing a scene, completely differently, from one outcome to another. But I mean, Adam was great. Sarah was amazing.
She was wonderful. They were both were. She was fantastic as the mom. Yeah.
I couldn't believe we got her, because I really liked her. She was a voice in The Witcher 3, I think. And I thought, who's that? I wonder if we could get her. And then there was one of those weird coincidences.
You were interested in her by the voice alone, or had you already seen?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
good.
good.
I was interested in actresses who were in video games.
Yeah.
And that was one of the really strong characters, and I thought, I bet she's good. Because a lot of these voiceover actors just are very good actors and theatre actors. And I'd never really heard of her, to be honest, at the time, because I wasn't watching Penny Dreadful. She was in Penny Dreadful.
Okay. Yeah.
I hadn't seen that. And so we met with her, and then it turned out she was going out with one of the dwarfs in The Hobbit, Aidan. Can't remember his name. The guy who plays Poldark in the BBC show. They were boyfriend and girlfriend, and she knew Adam Brown really well, because she'd spent time in New Zealand when they were filming there and got to know Adam. And she went, I know Adam. and she's Irish. And so so she wanted to do it because Adam was.
But they never filmed together because she was working with the younger version of him.
Apart from the scene at the beginning where she dies. So they were together for that one scene. Right. She had this makeup on. But yeah, that was a hard scene. That was I always thought she would really be starting a game off with this most depressing scene ever. But they did an amazing job, and Adam was incredible. Yeah. She was such a good actress, because the angle of the mother. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Well, let's do this. I'm just gonna because I want to talk about what I loved about this. So we'll make sure at this point in the interview we'll put a little placard up saying spoilers, and then we'll let them know when it's not going to happen. But yeah, feel free to go ahead.
So the mother's really is the villain in the whole piece, but she's not really a villain in the sense that she's doing it out of malice. She knows that the only way for her son to survive in this bunker that everyone else is trapped in, they can't. There's not enough food to last the years and years they need to stay in there for it to be safe to get out. So she decides to kill everyone in the bunker off. But she uses her son to do it. The only person that can actually do the deed unwittingly is the son, who does it when he's around about 12 years old, 13 years old. And so there's this temptation for an actor playing that kind of characters to play it evil. And when I told Sarah, this is a mother who's doing it because she has to, she's got no other option. She has to save her son. It's the only way she can do it. And immediately, as soon as I told her that, the face changed. There were, from stern, evil, sinister to this. I mean, I'm not an actor, so I can't do it. But you just saw this incredible transformation of suddenly there's this regret in her face. And she does that on the stairs when she realizes she's listening in on two people talking. And you see her face change. And that's, getting that subtlety. I don't think I've seen that, well, certainly, it's difficult to get in a video game with CGI characters, things like The Last of Us do it brilliantly. But it's rare. But it's only really on a live action actor that you can get that sort of subtlety,
Absolutely. And there's just something about, seeing that kind of emotion. And even if they are getting to the point that they can make that really come across with animation, it's still, until you see when you see a real person going through that kind of a struggle. Also seeing was Adam, the pain he had to go through with his arm. My goodness, that was rough.
The broken bone scene was just horrendous. Just filming that was so disgusting. Well, we've got this program in the UK called Casualty, which is it's a bit like ER. And it's been running for years and years and years. And one of the makeup people from that was on the bunker. And she built this prosthetic arm, and she put all the hairs in, the little tiny hairs in so that we could do a big close-up. And it looked like a real arm. And so she had this system inside where you could break the bone and snap it back in. And she had a pump where you could pump. Somebody was pumping the blood, squirting out. And I just kind of said, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it. Let's just go in there close and, we want to see it. And one of the interactions in the game is you have to press your own bone back in. It's the only way you can.
I'm already like puckering at this point, just listening to you talk about it.
I mean, it was just, it was, even though, Adam was there pretending and his arm was behind his back and all of this. That was just such fun. I loved doing it, but it was really gross.
Well,
and then everyone was just playing with his arm, like it was this entity.
That's great. Yeah, I think about that. What I loved about, I'm a huge fan of storytelling, and I can be pretty harsh when a story, as you said, with horror, it's so easy to go down sort of the tropes, and it's those movies that are about anticipation and suspense and dread, that's the stuff that really can get to you. And so for this game to have the twist that it did, a big twist in any kind of storytelling, that you know, you're treading a fine line, where you're going to have a lot of, it's very easy for people to go, oh, come on, really? And what I felt with this was, it was fantastic. It was exactly the kind of twist that you wanted to go, no. And not only did it surprise me that she was, quote unquote, the villain, but immediately why. And that this is not a bad person doing a bad thing for selfish reasons. It's a person looking at the whole situation, realizing there is no real good way out of this. Everybody is doomed. She has the one person in this world that was born into this world that has the only chance, just simply because they're the youngest, happens to be her son. And so it's either 14 months with everybody or potentially 10, 15 years with one. And so it's so complicated, and you feel for her, you kind of agree with her, but B, when she carries it out, you still feel betrayed. And it's working on a lot of levels, because I could also see where, they were doing a lot of meetings and talking about, well, how do we do this? And we're running out of food. And so they were doing, but when you try to make a decision like that by committee, it's never, it's just going to get, there's going to be too many people putting it against us. So she makes this choice, and it's exactly great. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, the red herring, what you're supposed to think when you're playing the game, is that the commissioner, the commissioner who's here, he's
let me see that. Let me see that t-shirt.
Yeah, well, this is a quote from the game.
Seal that door. Unbelievable. That's great.
So he says in the game, seal that door immediately, but the way the actor says it, who's Graham Fox, who's a real friend, and he's fabulous. He sounds like seal that door immediately. And the more we heard it in the editing booth, the more it just became Amelia Lee.
Oh, that's funny.
Like, who is this Amelia Lee woman? So we got t-shirts.
That should be the protagonist of your next game.
Yeah, Amelia Lee. Yeah. But yeah, you're supposed to think he's the villain and he's up to something. So when you never really truly say, so that's meant to be the twist you're expecting.
And it's great because, again, as we were playing it, and he reminded me very much of the horror, the bad boss in my game, Paul Warner. He's just evil. He's the one who's creating all this havoc, and there's no two ways about it. He's the bad guy. And so there was a similar quality to this character where you just bought right into it. And then again, it came out of very naturally, but in a great surprise that switch.
It really came out of, when you're writing the story, it's just because I think we did have originally that the commissioner was the villain. And then you would change it to maybe John. It was John that did it. John was the villain. And so it was more a case of just, reworking the story over and over again until an ending came up that you would never have thought of in a million years on your own, if, just out of the blue, because it was too complicated. It was only through reworking it that ending appeared. And that's when I thought, well, hopefully that means that the audience won't see it coming, because we didn't see it coming when we were writing it.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was great. So, now, that said, that was to me, the wonderful reveal. And it makes sense to me that after experiencing that near the end, that you really left a very wide open ending. We need to decide what he's walking out into. Was there a temptation for you to show us what that was?
No, never. It was always what I wanted was the bookend of the baby breathing for the first time at the start of the game, and then John breathing at the very end of the game.
Oh, that's
and
great.
is that his last breath? Is that his first breath of a new life? And I wanted that to be the question mark in the gamer's mind. But also, the moment before that of, because John can decide to stay in the bunker forever and just die there.
Which, by the way, we of course chose to go, and then when we finished our all of the folks that watched it, there's two. You should have done the other one. So I don't know what happens when he stays. So you have to tell me what happens when he stays.
Well, there's a horrible shot where he decides not to leave. He closes the door back again, and his mother's there behind him, and she says, "Good boy." And then it just cuts to a wide shot of the bunker in the distance, barren wasteland. So it's quite chilling, and I prefer that ending because
I wish we had done that.
Well, I kind of think that John doesn't deserve to have a good life afterwards. Whether he does or not, we don't know. But I think he did actually know what he was doing when he put that vial of stuff in, because he was like 12, 13. I think he knew what he was doing. And so as an adult, he should have decided, I don't deserve it. So I don't know. I think the guilt would make him stay with his mother, basically. He promised his mother he would stay in the bunker and never leave the bunker. And to me, the character would stay there. It's probably not what the audience want, but it's like what the character.
Oh yeah, when you're brainwashed from birth to exactly. he did not have a lot of options. You just felt like and he was he was such a perfect casting for and I imagine it would have been it could have been easy to cast a different kind of actor that's a more traditional sort of protagonist of a and to that actor really, it just by the casting alone, you immediately have a sense of who this person is, of how he was brought up, and it's really, it was just, they always say the casting is like 90% of whatever, but in this case,
absolutely true. It's 100%. I mean, you make your movie when you cast it, basically. You're going to have an easy time or a hard time depending on who you cast. But I mean, I got the idea for Adam from the Blu-ray DVD extras of The Hobbit, which I was watching the behind the scenes. So it wasn't when Adam Brown was an actual dwarf that I thought he's perfect. Because he doesn't have very many lines in The Hobbit. A lot of it got edited. And he's wearing
all the makeup and all that, right?
Exactly. But it was when he didn't have all the makeup on, and I saw him, and I just immediately went, "That's John. That is him." And then, of course, you're thinking, "Oh, we'll never get him," because he's just done a Peter Jackson film, 3. So we'll never get him. But he was just the nicest guy, and he's just, and he just came on board, and he was.
Oh, that's great.
You kind of breathed a sigh of relief when he came on set. When Adam came on set, I always went, "Oh, thank goodness," and everybody kind of went, "Oh, thank goodness," because we knew we were in safe hands. He knew exactly what he was doing.
That's great.
It was always easy.
Well, I may ask if I would love to talk with him at some point. If you could ever broach an introduction, I would appreciate that, because it would be fun to talk to a fellow. There's only so many of us out there.
Yeah, I know. You're a unique bunch,
right? Definitely. And it's funny. In my, the Phantasmagoria, there's only 2, but that was supposed to be a franchise, and it was going to be the whole idea was that it was very Twilight Zone, like each one is its own separate story. So they had the first one, which was the haunted house, evil entity in the house, and it was the female protagonist, and then there was mine. So I never, again, we were just actors, so I never met the woman who was in the first game. Had heard, seen some scenes and stuff from it. So when ultimately I decided to revisit the making of our game, it was for me, this whole channel came as a result of COVID, boredom and more time on my hands. And so I ended up doing this, I realized that right in the middle of COVID, it was the 25th anniversary of the making of Phantas 2. And I had never really talked about it before. So I thought, well, this will be fun. Maybe I can just reach out to all the people who made it. I haven't seen most of them since we made it. And then we can just do we can just remember and reminisce, and I can create like an oral history project of the game. And so that's what I did throughout, I guess, 2021 or whatever, we did that. But that, of course, meant, then at that point, I started to amass a bit of a following on YouTube. And then, it just made sense. Well, why don't we reach out to the folks who made the first game? So I finally reached out to the woman, Victoria Morcell Hemmingsen, who was the protagonist, and said, hey, we're the only two people in the world that did this. Would you be willing to talk to me? So she and I have actually become quite good friends. I mean, she'll play games with us, and she joins us and we just had her play her game for the October, sort of Halloween time. And so I think there's a small little brotherhood, sisterhood of these of these people.
Yeah. I mean, it must be it'd be interesting to hear you talking to Adam and the differences in the filming and the differences in, the productions and all that. Because it's such a unique thing, and everybody, you would explain everything to everybody 10 times, why are we shooting this again? And why are we doing this and this? And, I mean, I had to storyboard every frame of the bunker. It was the only way that I thought on set it's going to be really confusing to answer all these questions, because I know you always get a million questions every day. And I read somewhere that, because I'm not a film school person, I read somewhere that it doesn't matter what you say as a director, as long as you have an answer. Just have an answer. So if someone says to you, is it the red hat or the blue hat? You say the blue hat, and then
don't hem and
go away, and you go,
right.
oh, it's the red hat. He's a cute Jason. So I just thought I'll storyboard every frame, and I'll just stick to that storyboard, because in the comfort of your own office, you can spend time thinking about each shot. But when you're on set and it's going at 90 miles an hour, you don't have the time to change things. You don't have time to improvise. Although we did, actually, now and again, you would just say, right, we're just going to have to change this setup because it's not working. And you would have to change something. But at least if you've planned it properly, because it's a video game, it's not like a movie. It's very precise. You've got to be very, very precise about every shot, because that's going in the game, and every shot's relevant to the story. It's not like you can edit it afterwards and just make it all up.
You talk about continuity in films. I think continuity in these video games is like it's so much more, because with every choice you're making, right?
And also the shots are on screen for longer, and the bunker, they're all looped shots. A lot of shots are looped because we wanted it to look like it was live. It was there. It wasn't a still. And so, you'd work out ways so that it could look looped without looking looped. So the actor, if the actor moved around too much on a loop, it looks like a loop.
Yeah. I forget, did Adam have to do what we would call fidgeters? Was there ever a point where like the game is sort of paused? So if the player, so what we would do in our game, I spent 3 or 4 days standing in all of the locations and every spot that I was in, so that if someone were to leave and go to the bathroom, that Curtis would just sort of be standing there looking around and waiting for the next choice for him to be told to do. And so it was always, that was such a bizarre thing to film. So we laugh a lot about, like, teaching fidgeting to potential FMV actors. Did he ever have to do any of that?
I mean, Adam had very specific hands, and we tried to get people to replace also his body when he was off one day. We got a dancer to come in to pretend to be him in the gas mask suit and the hazmat suit, and he just wasn't walking correctly, but it didn't look anything like Adam. Even the way he would throw things would be different. There's a scene where you've got to throw an air filtration unit into a sort of safe area, and the way this other actor did it wasn't right. It just, and we all kept looking at each other going, is it me, or is it, this does not look right? You wouldn't think you could mess up a throw, but that took forever. Even now I look at that scene and I go, oh God, I've seen lots of YouTubers play the game and they laugh at that throw and they don't know why. It's funny, because it's so it's kind of like he's tossing away some garbage. Whereas it's a really, highly radioactive piece of, heavy equipment.
Right.
And it just doesn't look right. Anyway, but yeah, Adam had to do a lot of things with his hands, and we would have to get him in just to kind of come in and press the button, or, turn a TV on, or open a door, or open a drawer. In fact, that was the last thing we shot in the bunker. We realized we'd missed a drawer opening shot, and it was the most boring shot ever, but it was like, that was
but you needed it,
and it was just him coming in with his uniform on one arm and opening the drawer, and that was it.
So I read also that ultimately at one point you cut this into a short film, and did this get shown at Cannes? Is that true?
Yeah, there's a Cannes short film corner, and it was the first, I believe, video game footage to be shown at a major film festival.
How was that experience?
Really cool. It was really cool, and yeah, we got to go to Cannes and see all the other films, and it was really exciting. But just that, to be able to do that, to bring FMVs to something like a film festival, to make them sort of legit, and to make FMV a sort of thing to be recognized. I think.
I guess what I thought was that you took the footage, turned it into a regular film. Were you able to interact during this, or was it just a
no,
short?
It's a regular. It's my sort of director's cut of the story.
Oh, but you were able, in the story, you're able to see, let's say, somebody picking, you're still seeing it as the interactive part, or is it just kind of a film?
No, a lot of that sort of, opening a drawer stuff was not part of the short film.
Okay.
Because it's not very interesting.
Yeah.
But we would, all this, the story about the sort of flashbacks and the, the mother and the conspiracy and everything else going on, that was the short film. So we just sort of distilled it down, into a nice little.
How was it received? How did it go?
Yeah, good. I think it won a couple of awards or something. It certainly won an award for the music.
Oh yeah, the music's great in that.
Terry Goldsmith Award or something. It won. I love the music.
How did you come across? How did you get that composer to work?
Yeah, well, Dom Shovelton, his name is. He's been used before by the producer, and he lives in the same town as me.
Oh, great.
In England. So it was a no-brainer. He does really cool kind of commercials and car commercials, and he's got a very, really clever way of using electronic sounds because I kind of wanted a retro John Carpenter vibe. One of my favorite movie. One of my favorite movies ever is The Thing.
Yeah,
John Carpenter's, and that's obviously a big influence on this, and probably The Shining are the two big influences. And I just kind of wanted that vibe of that sort of, everyone has a theme. So even the bunker itself has a sort of theme, which is this, throbbing, incessant theme.
Mm-hmm.
And Margaret has a theme, John has a theme. And the soundtrack, I just love. I mean, when I first saw the scene, which is the big twist scene, that's all the different shots put together, John's realization, I just filled up with emotion because it was like the culmination of all that work. And then seeing it come to life with music was just like such a huge moment.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. And well deserved, after all that work, you finally have that. It's rare. Ooh, I don't know about you, but it's so easy to just keep plodding forward. And if you're always plodding forward, there's just so many hurdles that are ahead of you. And if that's kind of who you are, it's very difficult to look back and see where you've come. and
Mm.
and to have occasionally those moments where you get to look back and see something that you did that actually can fill you with
Yeah.
emotion. That's a
Yeah.
well deserved
I don't know
reward.
why. The same thing happened on the end of the hunting when it wasn't until I'd done the final credits and I put this music on the final credits. And it's like it's sort of, I guess when you're producing, you're directing, you're writing it, and you just, you're sort of so busy making the thing, and you're trying desperately for not to be awful and terrible and to be, kind of lambasted.
Right.
When you've made it, and it feels good, suddenly all this emotion comes out. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really, that happened with both of them. Whereas I've done loads of other stuff and I've not had any reaction like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
or, TV and stuff. You're just kind of glad you got paid for it, really. At the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
probably because you put so much of yourself into it that's why, that happens.
I had I had an idea for the ending of the ending where we leave the bunker. So we have him take that breath, and then from his point of view, we see that there's just a full shopping mall filled with people just kind of going about their day, and that's the whole time everything's been just fine. And
It's fine. People are like, who's that? Yeah. Well, I watched that thing recently. What was it called? Forgot what it was called, but it was the Apple TV series based on the book Wool. Everybody will know what this is that we're talking about, but it's set in a bunker in the future, and they have that moment at the end. I shouldn't really spoil this series; it's not my series. But there's a moment at the end where you realise what they're looking at, actually, what is out there.
Yeah.
And that was quite a nice twist. I liked that twist. But yeah, we had so many options. People were saying, "So what are you going to do? You're going to do the bunker 2, and so on." And what does John do after?
Yeah.
He out. Does he just die?
Yeah. Right. Right.
I think if I was going to do a bunker 2, it would be not that character. It would be a different character in a different bunker.
Yeah. Because there had to be more than one. So is there what are you working on now? Is there anything that's percolating? Are you in the middle of anything or?
Well, I'm just, I've finished just writing another interactive movie.
You finished it already?
Video game.
Is it done?
Yes, it's writing process has been completed. So it's ready to go, and we're now looking for financing for this next one. It's more of a X-Files style sci-fi sort of story with a bit of covert spy stuff going on as well. So it's really multi-cameras. It uses sound a lot. Sound's very important to the whole overall concept.
Have you found the location already? That sounds like that's the most important thing.
No, for this one, funnily enough, I've deliberately set it in places that will be easier to find production-wise.
Okay.
So like a house and
an office, right?
Yeah. There's there's one unusual location, but yeah, most of them are fine. I guess part of your brain as a writer as a producer too, because you're thinking, oh well, we need to be able to film this, and there just aren't that many easily accessible and not that expensive cool locations around.
Yeah,
I mean there are plenty of locations that cost Disney money, which we can't afford. You have to keep things low on an FMV because there's only a certain amount of people who are going to buy these. God love them. The ones that buy them. Love them all. But it's a finite audience, really.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be sensible when you're making these.
Yeah, absolutely. How much bigger in scope and interactivity, and where do you feel
it's much bigger in interactivity? It's much more on the sort of not for broadcast side of interactivity, and it's longer, so it's like 4 hours long as opposed to the bunker, which is like 1.5. So it's longer, and it's a bigger, more epic story. And it's a game first and a movie second, as opposed to the bunker, which was a movie first and a game second.
Well, you should you should bring Tori and I in for a couple of cameos. We could come in and
definitely
we'll be like a little Mulder and Scully comes in and then leaves.
Definitely. Well, I'm all for that. Bringing in anyone who's as enthusiastic or knows anything about this world of FMV, because it's one of those things you can say FMV to people and they have no clue what you're talking about, or they really know what you're talking about.
Right. More people don't. I mean, it's just it's a small little club that
you got to say, well, it's like a movie, but you can play it like a game, and you've got to start explaining yourself like a lunatic. So,
right. Well, I just think what you're doing is fantastic, Allan. It's so neat to see, and the way that again, everything to me is new, but we've been playing some games, and once somebody on our Discord said, you really should check this out. And just to know that it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was done with such, it's just done on such a, I don't want to use professional, but it's so professional. It's so, it's got a heart to it. It's got a great story. I mean, just everything that you did with that. I was so impressed. So it was really important to me to
Thank
meet
you so much.
and talk to you a little bit about it. Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure. I mean, I always love talking about the bunker, and it was just such a weird thing to do at the time, because really that whole FMV boom hadn't happened yet. So we were still trying to explain to people what this is, and it was really nice that when it was released on PC, particularly PC, that people knew that there was a whole people like me who were in the 90s who'd played things like the Daedalus Encounter and Wing Commander and that kind of thing. They just went, oh right, hang on, it doesn't have to look like that anymore. It can look slightly better, bit more HD and a bit more movie-like. And it's great that technology's done that. I think there's even more things we can do in the future with FMV, even more cool, exciting things which can make it even more gamified without losing what's magic about having real actors in real environments.
Yeah.
Telling real stories.
I'd love to. I'm sure your fans have probably clamored for the ability to see or play the hunt again. Hunting. Yes. Is that ever? I mean, at the very least, would you ever want to release some of the footage so people could see what you did, or is that it would?
Yeah, I would. I did try once actually. I thought, can we do this now as a PC game? Can we? It's just the trouble is it was filmed at such low quality that when you blow it up onto PC, I mean, people would just go,
right.
It would probably work on a TV screen quite far away from me, but close up, it's really grainy. Yeah. I mean, you could do it. I mean, I think there are adverts online, or I've got some trailers online as well as part of my YouTube channels.
Yeah, we'll check it out for sure.
It's on my Vimeo channel, maybe.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just the best fun, filming something this close.
And it was the, it was the beginning, and it was that step that you took that's led you to where you are right now, which is
all thanks to my daughter who's in the kitchen right now, cooking her dinner. It's all thanks to her swiping that iPad,
she's not the 2-3-year-old anymore. She's actually in the kitchen.
No, she's 14, and
I got a 14-year-old. Is she what? Is she a freshman, 9th grade? I'm not sure what you go about.
I think 10th grade, you would say. Yeah, in America. Yeah, year 10, they call it.
Year 10, gotcha. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the family's doing well. Everybody's good. You guys are.
Yeah, everybody's great. Yeah, we've got 3 kids. My son, he's off in Leeds University. He's learning filmmaking. He's doing a film degree. And my 2 daughters, they're still at school. So Excellent. We're all great.
Awesome, Allan. It's a pleasure to meet you. It really is, and I wish you all the best. I'm going to be watching for everything that you do from now on, and would love to stay in touch at some point.
Oh, definitely. It's so nice to talk to you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your day, and thanks for taking the time. And go enjoy your dinner. I hope your daughter does a nice job with her.
Let's hope so.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
There you go. My conversation with Allan Plenderleith. What a great guy. Boy, I got to tell you, I just I feel so lucky to be able to talk to these talented individuals. I love hearing their stories, and Allan was no exception. I'm super excited to see what he comes up with next, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you do like these conversations that Daniel and I are providing for you, then please help us continue to make them by joining our Coffee or Patreon page and becoming a monthly member. Or if that doesn't work out, you can give us a one-time donation to help us continue to provide the content that we provide on this channel. All right. Hope to see you soon, and have a good one. Bye, everyone.